English language learner, ELL. Anyone learning to speak English whose native language is not English. ELL can be used as an umbrella term to include ESL, EFL, and ESOL students, or ESOL. Usually this term is used in K through 12 programs. ESL versus EFL. English as a second language is considered ESL. Learners whose primary language is not English, yet who live in places where English has some sort of special status or public availability. English as a foreign language, EFL, learners are learners of English who live in places where English is, by and large, an academic subject, which functions narrowly in that culture as a tool for communicating with outsiders. So really, what is the difference between ESL and EFL? Well, ESL students are those who are studying in an immersive way by living in a country whose national language is considered English. Therefore, they learn English in the classroom, and they have opportunities to use English in everyday situations, such as in restaurants, banks, or supermarkets. On the other hand, EFL students are learning English in their home country, so that when they leave the EFL classroom, they are unlikely to hear any spoken English again until they return to their EFL class. ESOL, English speakers of other languages. ESOL. This refers to elementary, secondary, higher, and adult education English language learners or programs. ESOL is essentially equal to the term ESL. The difference is that ESOL is more politically correct, since many language learners speak multiple languages. So English may be their third or fourth language or more, and not necessarily just their second language. L1, first language. The language learned at home from the primary caregivers. Your L1 can also be called your mother tongue, primary language, or native language. L1 is a term most often used in textbooks and research about TESOL. L2, second language. This is any language, whether third or their 20th, that is learned after the first language. Okay? So L2 is a shortcut way of referring to someone learning a language other than their native language. It doesn't really matter if it's actually the third language they're learning. It can still be called their L2. The term L2 is most often used in textbooks and research about TESOL and may be applied to a class that has true L2 learners in there as well as L3 or L4 learners or so on. It is a generic term. Native American. See also American Indian. Indigenous people within the United States descended from Aboriginal North Americans. Native Americans should not be confused with native speakers. Someone who was born and raised in the United States and speaks English at home, in school, and in social situations would be considered a native speaker of English or a native English speaker. Someone born and raised in Korea who speaks Korean at home, in school, and in social situations would be considered a native speaker of Korean or a native Korean speaker. Differently, though, a Native American is a particular ethnic group that lives in the United States. Native Americans usually have their own language they speak, while they also can speak English. For many years, they were referred to as Indians or American Indians. However, the politically correct term now is Native American. Notice that unlike the term native speaker, Native American is capitalized because it is a proper noun. Native culture. The culture in which the primary language is acquired along with primary socialization. So essentially, the culture you grew up in is considered your native culture. Native language. This is the language learned at home from the primary caregiver or givers. You are a native speaker of your native language. Synonyms for native language are mother tongue, first language, and primary language. The target teaching level refers to the educational level of students that a prospective teacher wishes to teach after career preparation. So in other words, we're talking about you. When you finish this MA TESOL program, What level or age group of learners would you like to teach? The big divisions are K through 12 and adults. K through 12, of course, can be divided into secondary and elementary schools and kindergarten. But adults are divided into several categories also. There are adult schools which have few criteria for entry and are considered non-credit ESL programs. If the adult school is part of a community college, then it is considered continuing education and is usually more rigorous than private adult schools, even though it also is non-credit ESL. There are also SIEs, Schools of Intensive English, that tend to require students attend class a few hours every day for 8 to 10 weeks. These may be credit or non-credit programs. Usually they are feeder programs for four-year colleges or universities, so that graduates of the SIE usually attend that particular university. Another possible target teaching level is credit ESL at a community college, or university. So the students are admitted as a college student, but they have to study ESL classes first. Their grades for these credit ESL classes will appear on their regular college transcript. Any of these levels can also be targeted for EFL teaching. Target culture. The culture of the people who speak a second language being acquired. We don't often talk about target culture because it usually falls under the larger picture of target language. As a student learns their target language, they should also learn their target culture. However, it does not always happen seamlessly, so instructors should spend some effort on articulating the deeper values and beliefs of the target culture. Target language. The language that is being learned in SLA, Second Language Acquisition. Target language specifically refers to a language being learned other than the first language. L2 may refer to the target language, but L2 also can refer to a language or languages that have already been learned. So target language and L2 are not exactly equal. Sometimes they can be synonyms for each other, but not all the time. For example, someone who is proficient in English, their L1, and French, which was their L2, would not appreciate having French called their target language because it is no longer a target. It has already been acquired as their L2. TESL versus TEFL. Teaching English as a second language, TESL, are teacher education programs whose candidates will teach ESL. Teaching English as a foreign language, TEFL, are teacher education programs whose candidates will teach EFL. If you haven't looked yet, please check the entry for ESL versus EFL, because that will help you understand this entry. If you are preparing to teach in a country where English is the official or unofficial language, then you are studying TESL. If you plan to teach English in a country where most English is spoken in the classroom, then you are studying TEFL. However, generically, we refer to all teacher education programs for ESL or EFL as TESOL, Teaching English to Speakers of Other Languages programs. TESOL versus TESOL. Teaching English to Speakers of Other Languages is TESOL, and that's the discipline of instructing English learners. Teachers of English to Speakers of Other Languages Incorporated, TESOL, is the international professional organization whose mission is the furthering of the teaching of English around the world. TESOL can either refer to the professional organization of TESL and TEFL instructors, or to the career field of teaching English to learners where English is not their native language. So, you will have to pay attention to the surrounding context in order to know which use of TESOL it is. TOEFL, not TOEFL, TOEFL. Test of English as a Foreign Language, the TOEFL test, is a proficiency test used as one basis for U.S. college admission for non-native speakers of English. The TOEFL test is a standardized English proficiency test for international English speakers. It's not good for the Generation 1.5s who live in English-speaking countries but are not fluent. It's good for the international student. Even though TOEFL looks like it might be related to TEFL or TESOL, it's not, because the T in those words refers to teaching or teachers, but the T in TOEFL references test.